I will have the pleasure now to call Mr. Bilal Atkinson Sahib, Regional Amir, North East Region, UK, to deliver his speech, The Relation of the Promised Messiah alayhi salam with Allah Almighty. Please.
Assalamu alaikum. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. The subject which I've been asked to address you today is the promised Messiah's relationship with Allah the Almighty. In fact, Allah the Almighty's relationship with all his prophets is clearly stated in the Holy Quran, which states, "Most surely we help our messengers and those who believe, both in the present life and on the day when the witnesses will stand forth." This particular verse holds out a promise to all divine messengers that God's help, comfort and support will always be with them, and the evil designs and plans of their disbelieving opponents will all ultimately fail. The truth of this great promise has been demonstrated again and again throughout the history of prophethood, and especially during the lifetime of Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the holy prophet of Islam. This everlasting promise of Allah the Almighty to his prophets has more recently been manifested during the lifetime
मसीह माऊद और महदी अलैहिस्सलाम की हयात तैयबा में पूरा हुआ है। आपकी जिंदगी में
to illustrate this close spiritual relationship during his lifetime that it is impossible to count them all. However, a few events will be highlighted to describe this divine relationship that was demonstrated so manifestly during the lifetime of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. Throughout his life as a prophet of God, the promised Messiah alayhi salam was often denounced and received all sorts of abuse from his opponents, and he has personally remarked, "When such diseased people make prophets of God the target of their insinuations and think ill of them, God becomes their enemy and stands up in defense of his prophets. He guards the honor of his dear ones with such jealousy as is unparalleled. When I was maligned and assailed in different ways, the same protective jealousy of God became operative in my defense." Unquote. The promised Messiah's relationship with Allah the Almighty began in his childhood. He related that he felt himself powerfully attracted towards God, and he was also faintly conscious and aware that sometimes in the future God would engage him to fulfill some of his divine plans. Even as a small child, he requested his cousin Ahmad Bibi, the daughter of his maternal uncle, to pray that he may be granted the grace of prayer. This most humble request from an innocent child proved that he had a pure heart filled with the love of God. In 1869, the promised Messiah alayhi salam was requested to hold a debate with and refute certain doctrines expounded by Muhammad Hussain of Batala, who had recently qualified as a Maulvi, and whose views were not approved of or acceptable to his fellow citizens. The promised Messiah alayhi salam proceeded to Batala that same evening. Muhammad Hussain was in the mosque and opened the debate with a speech in which the promised Messiah alayhi salam found nothing objectionable regarding certain theological points, as he found them in accord with Islamic teachings. He openly declared that there was nothing in the speech which required refutation and refused further debate. For his open and truthful statement, the promised Messiah alayhi salam was ridiculed not only by his opponents, but alas also by those who had invited him to support their views in the debate. Such was his love for truth and honesty. He was prepared to receive their ridicule, whether they were friend or foe. He knew at the end of the day he was answerable to God alone for his actions, and not to any worldly acquaintance or friendship. He always suffered any humiliations with great dignity, cheerfulness and decorum. And only a man of upright character has the courage to speak the truth, even when it is very unpopular. In this particular incident in his life, the character he showed did him great credit, so much so that God was immensely pleased with him. And that same evening, he received the revelation that God was pleased with the course of action he had taken, and that he would bless him, so much so that kings would seek blessings from his garments. Today, by the sheer grace of Allah, we have witnessed on a number of occasions the fulfillment of this divine promise, when kings have attended previous UK annual Jalsa Salanas and have literally received blessings of the garments of the promised Messiah alayhi salam from the Khalifa of the day. The death of the promised Messiah's father was a critical point in his life, and he described his personal situation as his father's death in the following words, and I quote, "I was 34 or 35 years of age when my father died. In a dream I had been warned that his death was approaching. He was then in Lahore and hastened to qadiani. He was suffering from dysentery, but I had no apprehension that he would die the following day. In fact, there had been some change for the better in his condition, and he appeared quite steadfast. The following day, we were all with him at noon, when he kindly suggested that I should go and have some rest, for it was the month of June and the heat was intense. I retired into an upper room and a servant began to massage my feet. Presently, I fell into a light slumber, and the revelation came to me. We call to witness heaven, where all decrees originate, and we call to witness that which will happen after sunset. And I was given to understand that what was to have to happen after sunset was my father's death, and that this revelation was by way of condolence on behalf of God Almighty. Most people would be surprised at this interpretation, that God Almighty condoled with me. It should, however, be remembered that when God, glorified be his name, treats someone mercifully, he deals with him like a friend. We read in the traditions that on certain occasions God Almighty laughed. This also is an expression of the same type. When I received this revelation, which foretold the death of my father, the thought passed through my mind, due to my humanity, that some of the means of income which were available to my father would now be closed, and we might be confronted with difficulties. Thereupon I received another revelation. Alaysa Allahu bikafin abduhu. Is not Allah sufficient for his servant? This revelation conveyed great comfort and satisfaction to me, and it found its firm place in my heart.